and welcome back to my channel. We are back in England. We traveled back a few weeks ago. When I started this channel, I introduced myself by saying that I live in 2 countries. So we just came back from Kenya, where we've been for the better part of the year, since February. And as the law states here, if you're coming back into the country, you need to go into a 2-week self-quarantine, which we did. So that was an interesting time. And I just thought I would talk about what it's like to travel with a baby, especially flying with a baby on a plane, and especially during these COVID times. So let's get into it. So my very first time flying with my baby was when she was 4 months old. I was going to see a friend. This was before COVID, and I was going to see my friend, one of my very close friends in Dar, and I wanted to introduce her to my new baby. And so we took the trip, just the 2 of us. We were just there for the weekend, and flying with a baby who's at least 4 months is good because they are able to sit with a bit of assistance. So she could sit up a bit with support, which was good because they let you sit with your baby on your lap, and they give you like one of those, it's like a seat belt that goes through your seat belt, and then they're just like on top of you. If you're traveling with a baby, or if you're thinking to fly with a baby, the best thing is make sure that you stick them on your boob every time you're taxiing, just before takeoff, and also when you're landing, because as you're gaining altitude, the pressure starts to increase. And for us adults, we know how to move the jaw or talk or chew something, and that helps to relieve the pressure. But for babies, they don't know how to do that for themselves. So if you stick them on the boob, that sucking motion helps to move the pressure out of their ears. Otherwise, you hear babies crying. This is why if you're flying on a plane and you hear babies crying during takeoff, it's because of the pressure and they don't know how to handle it. How to help with that situation is usually just sticking them on the boob, and that's what I did. And literally, like, as soon as I did that, she would be fine, and then I would take her off again as soon as we're on cruising height, and it was fine. The only downside with traveling with her by myself is the way I felt like I wasn't getting any help. This is the thing about when I talked about in my video of best and worst things about being pregnant. I felt like when I was pregnant, people saw me and people would come and offer to help me and offer to help carry my things or offer me a seat and that kind of thing. With a baby, it didn't happen. And I don't know if it's like a cultural thing, because whenever I was going through customs, whenever I was going through security, like I was just so overwhelmed, and it really got to me. And I think maybe it's because I've spent some time on this side of the world that I know the difference. Like here, people tend to offer to help you or help you carry stuff, whether you're pregnant or not, whether you're a child or a woman or a man. Like if you look like you're overwhelmed, people come in and offer to help you. So I think it's just like a cultural thing, so something maybe we are taught to do. I don't know, but it really got to me. I really struggled with that, especially like going through security, where you have to take off your shoes, take off your belt, and then with a baby who can't sit on their own, or you can't put them down on the floor, or they can't stand or anything, you have to hold them the whole time. And that really, like, I got really upset about that, because they would just stand there like, get on with it, come on, hurry up. And nobody was offering to even hold them. I mean, this was before COVID, guys. So you could have said, here, let me hold your baby. Or here, someone actually offered to do that, and it wasn't anyone that was like airport staff or any of that. It was another passenger who happened to be a foreigner. So I guess, again, I think it's one of those cultural things of we don't know how to offer someone a hand when we see them struggling, unless you're getting paid. Because that's what I found. I found that when I'm in Kenya, I know this is going to sound really damning, but generally speaking, people will rush to help you and then ask for a tip. I mean, they would only do it if there's something in it for them. It's not something you do just because. I mean, there's some individuals who would, but generally I don't see it. I find that I really have to struggle, and I'm more aware of it now because of being able to see and compare both cultures and just recognizing, oh my gosh, people don't offer to help. So that was tough. But other than that, the trip was amazing. We had a nice time with my friend and went to the beach. She also has a young one, and it was just a really nice mom's weekend. So that was my first time traveling with her. The second time traveling with our baby was literally 2 weeks after that. We flew to England and we came back here for Christmas, for the Christmas period, and introduced her to the family, because she was born in Kenya. If you've seen my at-home birth, that we gave birth to her in Nairobi. So she was meeting her family for the first time, except for her grandma who had come to visit her a couple of times since she was born. And then it was pretty much the same thing where they had like a seatbelt, but also they gave us a bassinet, so it's like, it looks like a little baby cot, and there's a way that they set it up for you. So there's specific seats for people who are traveling with babies, and then they give you that cot thing. Unfortunately, by the time we were traveling, she was literally on the cusp of outgrowing that kind of size, and they have one size fits all. So then she would slot into it, but it was literally like a tight squeeze. I mean, it was fine, it worked out. It just, she wasn't as comfortable. And for a baby who likes to spread herself and roll around and just feel free, which is how she sleeps, like she's like a spider, you know, like she wasn't very happy with that. But it was a huge relief to have somewhere that I could place her down as opposed to holding her throughout, especially for a long flight, and especially since we had a transit. So the thing about being on a long flight is it's nice if you can have like relief, a place to place your child, and just take that pressure off of yourself. The other thing about being on a flight that has transit is I found it easier to do that with a baby who can't sit or walk yet, because when we were on transit, it was a 4-hour layover, and she just, you know, just lay in my arms and fell asleep, and then, you know, we connected our flight. I didn't have to worry about a child who was like running around and having to chase after her and trying to keep her entertained and all of that. So that was really easy for me, for us anyway. And at the end of the day, like, I would recommend, if you're thinking to travel with a child who's at that age where they're running around and stuff, maybe find ways to entertain them or keep them occupied, just because, especially if you're doing a layover, I mean, if you can avoid them, but if you can't, those transit can be really tough, you know, getting off the plane and then finding a place to sit and then getting on a plane again and, you know, lugging around all this luggage plus a child. It can be a lot. But I would just say, just look into it and see what options you've got. Another tip is, if you can travel with your buggy, or if you can travel with your pushchair or pram, check with your airline to see that they allow that kind of thing, because some airlines don't. And someone was telling me this the other day, that there's someone who was traveling and then she couldn't, or they couldn't have the pram on board, even if it was like to be checked in as part of the luggage on hold, which I don't know which airline that was, but it was a really tough trip to get to the destination and then still have to carry the child plus all the luggage. So please just look into that. Make sure the airline you're using has all those things accounted for. The next time we traveled with our baby was to Scotland, like the month after, just to meet more relations, introduce her to more family and all of that. And that was also a really short trip, under an hour, maybe an hour. And also same thing, I mean, because it was one of those small airlines, they didn't have those bassinet type things, but then she sat on my lap with the seatbelt, and that was really easy, so that was fine. The next time we flew with her was coming back to Kenya, and at that point obviously she was too big for a bassinet, but luckily the airline we flew gave us something that looks like a car seat, which was perfect. So if you can, just ask if they have something like that, because if she was in a sitting position, she could be sat, I mean, she was a bit high up, and you could see like she was kind of, it was like she was a performer, she was in a vantage position, and she could see everybody, but it was good because it also kept her amused. And then when she wanted to fall asleep, we would just adjust the seat and then she would just lie horizontal and fall asleep, and that was really good. And then the only time is if there's any turbulence, you have to take your baby and hold them and put the seatbelt around, and that's something which is standard. So that was a really good thing to discover. I didn't know about that, but then I was lucky that this airline had that, and that was very comfortable for her, and yeah, it just worked great. So I would recommend that to a bassinet, because I know when you fly airlines which only have bassinets, when your baby has outgrown them, you don't have a choice but to just have them on your lap the whole time, and that can be really exhausting, especially for a long flight, guys. Like, I found it really exhausting when we flew the first time, and then we had a bit of turbulence, and then I had to pick her up and put her on my lap, and there was a turbulence a few times, and it was just so tiring. And also she got sick of it. She was just like, I can't sleep in that tiny bassinet anymore. So then she was really cranky, and for the remaining maybe 3 hours of the flight, I had to hold her, and that was really exhausting. So, you know, just as a tip, if you can, just try and find out if they have that chair, or have a partner. That's the other thing. Like, the biggest tip obviously is if you can travel with someone, do, because then you can shuffle between the two of you. But other than that, yeah, just try and see if you get an airline that has all those boxes ticked. The last time we flew obviously was coming back here, and that was interesting because now we were, you know, flying in COVID times, and I think the biggest concern has been, you know, how is it traveling with the baby during COVID? How do you protect them? How do you put a mask on them? The rule, guys, is you can't put a mask on a baby that's under 2, and even if she was 2 and above, I don't know how many children would be like happy to have this thing on their faces, except for people who like it's become ingrained in them. Like I was talking to my friend in the US, and she was saying how it's so normal there that everyone wears masks all the time, and babies are made to wear them all the time, and they see their parents and their grandparents, you know, when they come to visit, wearing them all the time. So it becomes almost like it's just a trend. But the other thing about traveling at the moment is there's so many checks and balances that have been put in place, so that traveling has become the new norm. You know, like everything, there's hand dispensers, sanitizer dispensers everywhere. Then wearing a mask is normal, and yeah, there's that, you know, distancing and all that kind of thing. At the airline that we flew at the time, the flight was very, very empty, so we're really lucky with that. We didn't have to worry about being too like squeezed up with people, so that was really good. Basically, it's okay. It's not the scariest thing. I mean, I was pretty scared. I was pretty paranoid because I ended up buying one of those visor things. So I had my mask and then I had a visor, and I just looked a bit ridiculous. I think I was the only one on that plane who had it. I was glad when we landed and I saw other people from other airlines coming off other flights wearing them, and I was like, oh phew, you know, thank goodness not just me. But I was pretty paranoid. I was really worried, but also I was also thinking like, okay, I might protect myself as much as I want, but my baby is still exposed. So I was really worried, but in the end it was totally fine. And even being in quarantine for 2 weeks, we didn't pick up anything because both of us were fine. All three of us were fine. There was no symptoms of anything. So far we've been really lucky, and it's been really good. I just wanted to make this video to try and encourage people, like if you're thinking travel, because I've seen it come up in forums where people are asking like, oh, I want to travel, but I don't know, I'm too scared. Is my baby old enough? What's the appropriate age? How do I do it? What does it entail? This is basically what it is. A question someone asked me was, were we forced to get tested for COVID? We weren't. I think maybe different countries have different laws. Maybe you have to get tested in some countries. I think like Ghana, you have to get tested before you leave the country. We didn't have to get tested. We just had to do a 2-week self-quarantine. But also there was a question of, do you have to get your child tested for COVID? No, we didn't have to. I don't know if that's a rule which applied for those countries which you're traveling that has the rule of getting tested for COVID. I mean, the general consensus at the moment is that babies are not catching it as much or seem to have more immunity to it, but I guess this is a matter of checking and making sure. Then the other thing is whether we were forced to cover our baby is the other question that our friend asked, and no, nobody forced us to do anything. Nobody was like, it was pretty relaxed. I mean, guys, we've been in this period for quite some time now, so I guess the initial panic that was there has kind of subsided, and now people have just learn to get on with it. And even on the airline, like, you know, they would only insist on having the mask on when the stewardess would be going up and down serving food and stuff, but other than that it was pretty chilled. But again, we had a really empty flight, so that was really lucky for us. I do remember though when we landed that there was a flight that was emptying, and pretty much everyone that was on that flight had a visor on. And I think it's possible they came from a country where the rule was you couldn't travel unless you had a visor. So I guess just check the country you're going to, what their rules are, the country you're leaving from, what their rules are, because you don't want to show up at the airport and they're like, you can't get on the plane if you don't have a visor, or I don't know, like it's just a matter of checking, making sure that you've covered all your bases and you're prepared, and then you'll be fine. Check to see that they have allowance for carrying buggies. Check to see that you have those car seat type things. That I prefer them to the bassinet, but obviously it's down to preference. The smaller your baby, the better, obviously, for the bassinet. I don't know what it's like to travel with like a 1 month, 2 month old. I would imagine the bassinet would be better because they're kind of in a small baby cot enclosed kind of thing, and they're, you know, secure. But either way, whether it's a bassinet, whether it's a car seat type thing, I don't know what they call them. It looks like a car seat. You're still strapping them in anyway, so they're still secure. You don't have to worry about that. But then yeah, it's just worth checking. Check that your layover is not too long, and if it is, what the lounges are, or where you can sit, or how you can entertain them. You know, like at the end of the day, it's just a matter of maybe just being mentally prepared for all that kind of thing. And then yeah, carry hand sanitizers, carry masks and all that stuff in this COVID period, for as long as we're stuck in this period. And if you can't travel with someone, or if you're traveling with someone, then just make sure you're sharing the load, and then it's pretty easy. It's honestly, it's not that bad. So we've had our 2-week period of quarantine. I'm not gonna go too much into that, but it was just nice. Like, we had a few days of just staying in the house and unpacking and sorting ourselves out. And currently we're visiting my mother-in-law because we just thought it would be nice for, you know, to catch up with family, and also for our child to see her grandma and spend some time with her. So it's been really good to do that. Things here are getting a bit stricter, a bit tighter rules. In fact, they just announced something yesterday that made it even tighter. So we're adjusting, okay, just seeing how things go. But so far it's been really good. So I will keep posting as much as I can and updating you on whatever is relevant to the channel. If you have any questions or if you want anything specific to be addressed, please let me know. Hit the comment section. If you have your own views about traveling with a baby or any other tips that you'd like to share, please hit the comment section. Share with your friends and family that you think that this video might help. If you think that you've liked this video, just give me a thumbs up and see you in the next video.